The divorce had taken everything from me. House, stability, and dignity. My belongings fit in 2 suitcases. My clothes smelled faintly of the cheap motel I slept in, and every day I ran through the streets wondering how I would survive the night. The world felt huge and indifferent, as if it had forgotten that I existed at all. I walked past crowded cafes with laughter pouring out of them and restaurants where families were eating together. I walked past parks where kids were walking past parents holding hands and whispering secrets I would never share again. My stomach ached, but the teaching in my chest hurt more. If you like my content, please subscribe. Your single tap really motivates me to continue creating for you. People looked at me, but they didn't see me. Divorced, homeless, broken. I had become a ghost in my own life. I had not wanted this, but here I was, counting coins, rationing meals, sleeping under streetlights, and feeling the shame of failure pressing against every rib. Then one cold evening, as I was sitting on a bench staring at the fading city lights, a voice broke through my fog. "Are you Sophia?" I looked up, startled. A woman was standing there, impeccably dressed, with a leather wallet in her hand. Her eyes were kind but sharp, her tone serious. "You just inherited $7 million. I blinked once, twice, my mind raced. Inheritance, money, who? My ex? A mistake. I no longer had a family. Or so I thought. My heart was pounding against my ribs when she opened the folder and handed me papers, letters, and legal notices. I sat there frozen. The world, which minutes before had been cruel, empty, and dark, suddenly shimmered with possibilities. All my pain, all my hardships had brought me right here to a moment that felt like a miracle, but at the same time was terrifying in its magnitude. I was homeless. I had nothing. And now, in a split second, I had almost $50 million and a future I had never dared to dream of. The stranger smiled gently. "I know it's sudden, but it's real. You inherited it. Your name is on everything." I couldn't speak. I didn't know if I should cry or laugh. Everything that I had lost, everything that had crushed me, was now balanced by something so tremendous that I could not comprehend it. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I allowed myself to hope. The first night after the revelation of the strangers, I barely slept. I was sitting on the edge of the bench in the small motel where I had ensconced myself, staring at the legal documents and reading their words over and over again. Inherit millions of dollars. My name was on it. Every letter, every signature is confirmed by lawyers. My name is Sophia, owner, beneficiary. It was surreal. I had been walking the streets for weeks with nothing, and yet somehow a life-changing fortune had been waiting for me. It made me question everything I thought I knew about my life. Had it always been there? Was it a cruel irony that I had suffered so much to finally receive something that I didn't even know existed? The stranger, her name was Clarissa, stayed with me for a while and explained the details. Apparently, a distant relative, a grandmother, whom I barely remembered from my childhood, had left all her assets to me in a secret will, passing over my parents and other family members who had long turned their backs on me. Legal loopholes had kept it hidden until now. My name had been verified by old documents and DNA confirmation. Everything was legitimate. I wanted to scream, cry, laugh, but I didn't. I was too tired, too worn out from years of rejection to feel anything but a silent incredulity. Homeless one day, millionaire the next. It felt like a dream, a narrative that was too bizarre to be true. The next morning I went back to the streets for a moment, just to touch the reality that I had lived. The cracked sidewalks, the noise, the smells, everything was familiar, painfully familiar. The benches on which I had slept, the shop windows in which I had stared, hoping for warmth. Everything suddenly felt absurd in the face of the promise of life that was waiting for me. I had been invisible for so long, but the world would soon notice me, and I didn't know if I was ready. Clarissa guided me through the legal processes. We visited lawyers, signed forms, and completed tax documents. Every signature was a reminder. I had a claim, a right, a future that was no longer just about survival. But with this wealth came responsibility, management firms, consultants, legal supervisors for certain real estate. I had to learn to quickly navigate this strange world. I had spent years trying to survive with nothing, and now I should manage millions. I was thinking about my ex-husband. He had walked out of my life and had left me broken and penniless. I thought of my parents who had ignored my suffering and instead preferred my sister at every step. I thought of the nights when my children and I had starved, of the quarrels, the shame. Suddenly, all the pain turned not into anger or revenge, but into perspective. I had persevered, I had survived, and now the world was mine to take from me. It was not an immediate joy. I was still wearing the scars. I was still hesitant to trust. Clarissa reminded me gently, "This is sudden, Sophia. Take your time. You may be careful." But I couldn't. The money, the inheritance, the opportunity, it demanded action. I started to visit the real estate, luxury hotels, downtown offices, Walking through rooms that I had never imagined, I realized how huge the fortune was. Millions in assets, investments, companies in several countries. Suddenly, I was responsible for thousands of employees whose livelihoods depended on my decisions. Then came the calls. Lawyers, financial advisors, distant relatives I had never known, and even my arranged family who wanted to reach out to me. They wanted explanations. My mother, hesitantly but greedily, asked if she could claim a share. My sister tried to negotiate and pretended that she had rights. I listened politely, did not explain anything, and put the calls away. My life was no longer yours to determine. I had survived humiliation, deprivation, and betrayal. And now, for the first time, held all the cards in his hand. I moved into my first property, a modest but elegant apartment in the city, where I could breathe without fear, without judgment, without being invisible to the weight. I slowly started to rebuild, hired staff, learned about the hotels and assets, met the people whose work had created this fortune. I got involved, hands-on, determined not to be just a puppet. Every decision reminded me of the lessons I had learned in the time of need. Patience, ingenuity, and humility. But the best thing was my children. For the first time, I was able to give them stability, security, and dignity. Punctual meals, beds for sleeping, toys, books, opportunities. They no longer had to wait for crumbs. The same bitterness that had shaped my youth now drove the promise of her future. In the evening, I sat quietly and reflected. Homeless one day, heirs the next. Rejection had led to resilience. Hardness had taught me independence. And the question of a stranger, "Are you Sophia?" Everything had changed. By the end of the first month, I had taken up my inheritance. But more importantly, I had reclaimed myself. No longer a victim of circumstances or family negligence. I had entered the life that I deserved. And when I looked at the city lights from my new apartment, I realized that money could provide comfort, but what really mattered was control. The ability to act and the power to create a life without fear. The world that had once ignored me would now know my name, and I would no longer just survive. I would flourish. It was not just happiness. It was a chance to rebuild, to conquer back, to finally step into a life that had been denied to me. I just had to survive until I could claim it. I finally entered my new life. Children safe and smiling. The past is no longer homeless behind me. I owned everything, and for the first time I felt unstoppable. Monsieur vous.